The media really should be ashamed of itself, the way it deliberately sets out to inflame social issues for ratings. Now, we're in the middle of September 2024, and you think I might be going to talk about the US presidential elections, but I'm not. I'm going to talk about a topic that drives me potty. I'm going to have a rant about something that you might be surprised about, and if you're an American, possibly English, you may never even heard of this. So the headline I refer to was a headline that said, "Photograph of New York grocery store will shock Americans and Australians alike." So I have to tell you before I go any further, I'm in my 70s, I'm what's known as a boomer, and so boomers, old codgers, people of my age, if there's one thing that they go off their heads about on social media, it's the fact that so many of our big supermarket chains now don't have checkout operators. There may be one there, busy day maybe two, but by far there are dozens and dozens of checkouts that are automated. You go there, you run your barcode over the screen, put your card in, and you do it yourself. So it seems that boomers, people my age, they make comments pretty much in the vein, "I didn't come to do the shopping and then not get paid for doing their job for them." I'm harping on for that for too long. So then, what do you think this photo was? So the photo taken in a New York grocery store was taken inside Trader Joe's grocery store. And what it showed was that Trader Joe's had 37, you can look this up for yourself, had 37 checkouts open and manned, 37 of them. And it showed that as soon as someone had gone through, the checkout operator held up a baton like a big table tennis bat. And that was because off on the side of the store was a huge long queue where people got in line so that it was nice and fair. So then, as soon as the checkout was free, they would leave the queue and they would head to the checkout. Can you see? It's spring. Just starting to get spring. Flies. So, the thing about the queue was there wasn't just 37 people operating these checkouts, but also there was a queue supervisor. There was someone at the start of the queue, or the end of the queue, whichever it is, so that as soon as a baton went up, that person was there to say to them, "Go to number 6, go to number 9. And then also there was other staff members who simply walked between the end of the queue and those 37 checkouts, taking people to the checkout. And of course the beat up of this news headline, the story, was deliberately set to provoke Australian boomers. Why can't we have that in Australia? Why do we have to have automatic checkouts where we have to find the barcode on the product, scan it through? So, what's the point of this video? The point of this video is, in America, if you work at Trader Joe's, you get between $13 and $15 an hour pay. $13 to $15 an hour. We're not going to talk about the difference between American dollars and English pounds and Australian dollars, because each country's currency is valid for its economy. So you get $13 to $15 an hour. Now, what if you work on a Saturday in America? No, there are no penalty rates. Well, what about if you work on a public holiday? No, there are no penalty rates. What if you work midnight shift and you start working at, there are no penalty rates. So in America, it was set up on the free trade system. It was set up on the work. If you work, you will make it. And so what that was is, if you wanted to work, if you wanted a job, you worked. If you worked on the weekend, you were lucky you had a job. If you worked a midnight shift, you were lucky you had a job. That was America. I'm not saying what's right. I'm not saying what's wrong. But I'm just saying that in America, you get your $13 to $15 an hour for working in Trader Joe's, whether you're doing that on a Saturday, on Thanksgiving, on a Memorial Day, it doesn't matter. Why then in Australia do we find that we have no industry anymore? We make nothing. No more fridges. I come from a little place called Adelaide. We used to have a fridge manufacturer. We used to have a washing machine manufacturer. We used to have a radio manufacturer. We used to have several car manufacturing businesses. We had furniture stores. We had everything. What have we got at the moment? Well, we've got a lot of coffee shops. We've got, I think I've said coffee shops. Now, why is that? And it was very easy to get sidetracked here about the unions. You say, Steve, don't tell me that you're anti-unions. Well, once upon a time, little boys used to be the ones that had to clean chimneys because they were little. English naval ships were designed and built so that to take the ammunition from the armoury to the guns, the piping was so small to keep it as safe as possible that only little boys could crawl through it. So yes, obviously the unions did a good thing when they stopped child labour and women got equal pay, but what has happened in Australia is it never ever stops with the unions trying to keep their own jobs, justify their own salaries as unionists, and so are always trying to get more. Where do you draw the line? Great example. Look, a few years ago at the complete collapse of the American car industry because the people were getting $98 an hour for building cars with full health benefits, and it had just got to the point where it was cheaper for American car industry to say, look, we're just going to build our cars overseas. So I'm raving here. I'm not passionate on this subject. That's because I've just told you that you work for Trader Joe's, you get $13 to $15 an hour pay, irrespective of the day or the time. There are no penalty rates. In Australia, wow, where do I start with paid tea breaks, paid lunch breaks, penalty rates, shift rates for when you work later than a certain time, if you work earlier than a certain time, if you work on a Saturday, if you work on a Sunday, God forbid you work on a public holiday, which most places is double time and a half, if not more. And so the average, I will name the company, Woolies, Woolworths. That's one of our big major food supermarkets in Australia. Just to recap, Trader Joe, $13 to $15 an hour. Woolworths, $35 an hour. $35 an hour. And that's because you get all of these penalty rates. So when people say, I want more checkouts open, perhaps they should say, I want more checkouts open and I'm prepared to pay for it because otherwise the store can't function. Imagine if Woolies said, look, we want to give more people jobs, so at the end of the day when you do your shopping, whatever your shopping bill comes to, we're going to add 20% to that so that we can afford to pay our staff. So there you go, $35 an hour compared to $13 to $15 an hour. But there's a little bit more to it than that, and I wasn't sure whether to make this a separate video or not, but I'm going to make it really quick because in Australia we also have something that in England you've never heard of it. In America you've never heard of it. When I tell you now, you are going to say WTF. And that's because we have this thing in Australia called long service leave. Long service leave. Long service leave means that when you've worked for a company for 10 years, you get 3 months. Every year you get holidays. In Australia, you get paid to have your holidays. Most businesses, you don't only get paid, you actually get a little leave loading extra for your pay. But in Australia as well, on top of all of that, on top of all the conditions and bonuses and whatever the heck else you get, you also get long service leave. So at the end of 3 months, so at the end of 10 years working for someone, you get 3 months fully paid leave. Now you would think to yourself, well, that's pretty good, isn't it? But the company has to find that money. 3 months. But there's more to it than that, because then when you've worked for them more than 10 years, every year after that, every 1 year, another 9 days are added to that. So when you've worked for a company for 20 years, suddenly you get 6 months, 6 glorious months, swanning off on holidays, and you're still getting full pay. I worked in a law enforcement agency for the government. I worked for about 1 month shy of 40 years. Are you sitting down? I got 1 year's long service leave, which I chose to take as money. So the government had to pay me out a year's salary for doing nothing. Incredible. Long service leave, you say, what? I've never heard of it. What? So what happened is Australia was settled by convicts. They started to give convicts that proved themselves to be honest and reliable, they started to give them jobs. They're doing not a bad job. They can be a supervisor of a team of other convicts. But what they realised is they needed people with higher qualifications, better education. They needed people in administration. How on earth were they going to get someone to get on a sailboat and come all the way to... It's a fabulous country now, but I tell you, when it was first settled, it was tough. How are they ever going to get people to come here voluntarily? So what they said is, if you go out to Australia and do a job in Australia, at the end of 10 years faithful service, we are going to give you 3 months fully paid. You can come back to the mother country, come back to England, you can see all your relatives, you can see... Better be a bit careful what I say. You can come back to this freezing cold climate and this ghastly weather and this constant rain and the overcrowding. And then if you decide to, you can come back and you keep working for us and get another 10 years and another 3 months. And so that's what happened back when there were sailing ships. And that's how we got long service leave. But we've never lost it. And if you ask 9 out of 10 Australians, I guarantee you ask 9 out of 10 Australians, hey, how come Australia is the only country that has long service leave? How on earth did that come about? So very briefly, I'll get carried away, telling it too long, far too long, even though he's quite happy to stand here. So you think about that, you might have had a laugh, but realistically, what if you've got 1,000 employees and they're all due for long service leave? How the hell do you pay for that? Yes, you can turn around and, what, do you actually have to hire a staff member simply to cover all the people that take their 3 months long service leave? Or they're like me, they just let it build up and build up and build up, and suddenly you've got to find the money to pay them out. That simply stems from Trader Joe having more staff than, I don't know, Trojans in the wooden horse. I don't know, maybe. But anyway, there you go. A bit of a rant, bit of a rave, bit of a history on Australia, long service leave. Cheers.